Okay, so I looked at the New Zealand sea lion, or Phocarctus pucari, as the Latin name is. So first of all, we'll have a little introduction to the species, look at like where they're from, what they're about basically. Then we'll discuss the threats that can associate with the species and what things sort of disturb their populations. Then we'll understand what the ex situ and in situ conservation strategies are for the species and whether they're actually effective or not, which will come onto the evaluation and see what's good and what's not as good. So, Phocarctus pucari, or the New Zealand sea lion, or otherwise known as hooker sea lion as well. They're the deepest and the longest diving sea lion. They can reach up to about 500 metres in depth, which is quite deep for sea lions anyway. They're also, well, in 1998 they were considered one of the rarest sea lions in the world. That's because back then there was less than 10,000 in the world, but there was a prediction made in 2012 saying that 98% would be extinct in 5 generations. So that's 90% likely to be extinct in 5 generations. So mostly they are found in the Auckland Islands. I think 95% of the population are found in the Auckland Islands, and the other 5 are found on the Campbell Islands, which are a bit further away. So it's about 465 kilometres off the south coast of New Zealand. Can't really see it on there, but it's just that little dot there, and that's New Zealand up there. So yeah, that's where a lot of the population are found. So, between 1994 and 2014, the IUCN red list stated them as vulnerable, but when it got to 2015 till now, they changed to endangered. This is because of quite a steep decline in the population numbers. Usually, when looking at the population, pups are used as an index for like how many there are. So if we look at this little graph, this is from 1997 to 2009. There's actually a 50% decline in the numbers. So they reckon from 2008 to 2009, there's quite a big drop. They reckon this is because there was a lack of females actually coming back to breed because of anthropogenic disturbances. So yeah, couldn't find a more up-to-date one, but still they are in a decline at the moment. So now I'll have a little look at what actually threatens the New Zealand sea lion. So the first thing is commercial sealing. So up until the mid-20th century, it was legal to go out and hunt New Zealand sea lions for things like their fur and their blubber and stuff. It was quite a common practice, and obviously it really made a massive decline in their numbers. The next thing is squid fisheries. So there's quite a big Arrow squid fishery in New Zealand with a lot of... No, the first one didn't get reported until 1978 of bycatch of the New Zealand sea lion, but since then there's an average about 92 animals getting hauled out each year. And a less human-based threat is disease. So between 1998 to 2003, there were 3 epidemic diseases, bacterial agents that affected their populations, and they the first one was about 50% decline, then 30% decline, and then 21% decline in pup mortality. So there was a lot of them that were getting killed off with the diseases. Obviously, that can't really be helped by us, but the reason that disease is such a big problem for them is because they only have 2 small populations, one on the Auckland Island and one on the Campbell Islands. So because they're such a tight population, disease can spread quite quickly. So yeah, in New Zealand they have their own threat classification system. It's sort of like the IUCN Red List one, but they've stated that they are nationally critical, and that's because in the they've had a decline of over 70% in their numbers. So now we'll have a look at the actual conservation strategies for these animals. For ex situ, there's no actual recorded ex situ conservation strategies that I could find. There's a multitude of reasons that could be that ex situ have with marine mammals. So World Animal Protection stated there was a few problems. So exhibiting natural behaviours, which actually links to the next one as well. So because they've got such combined quarters, they can't usually exhibit their normal behaviours. So really putting them into an ex situ environment is not very good for their animals' well-being or for their health at all. And again, early deaths, so I think it was, so there's been quite a few studies that have proven to shorten the lifespan of marine mammals when they are kept in captivity. So really the ex situ probably wouldn't be the best route to go down anyway for the New Zealand sea lion or any marine mammals. So now we can have a little look at the in situ conservation strategies that they have. In New Zealand there's 3 in situ management strategies that they've implemented quite recently. So the first one is marine mammal sanctuaries and marine reserves. So they've set up an area, I think that's the picture. So they've set up an area 22 kilometres from the coast all the way around the Auckland Islands. And within this area there's no trawling, no fishing at all. So it's completely no fish zone in that 22 kilometre circle around the Auckland Islands. Next one is they close fishing zones seasonally. So in each fishing area around the island, they have quotas which, once they reach that of the bycatch of sea lions, then they actually close that fishing area until the next season. So that's preventing them from just keep hauling out more and more sea lions, because once they get to that certain point, they're not allowed to fish there anymore until the next season. The next one is sea lion exclusion devices. So this is, there's a picture. Basically, in the nets that they use, they've put a metal grid about halfway down, which obviously the gaps are small enough for the squid to fit through, but are too small for the sea lions to fit through. So, and because they've got a little hole at the top, it's basically leading them up to the hole, and so they can escape. That's that. So now we'll have a little evaluation of those different in situ techniques that have been used. So the marine mammal sanctuaries and the marine reserves. So obviously fishing has a direct impact, as we've seen, like bycatch from arrow fisheries are quite high. So by cutting the fishing completely in these areas, it's obviously going to help increasing the population. The only problem with the marine reserves is that it only protects that certain area. So when you're looking at, they were looking at some satellite tracking data, and actually the foraging and the mating sites weren't actually in that 22 kilometres. So it's effective within that 22 kilometres, but when you think about it, there's going to be a lot of them at foraging areas, there's going to be a lot of them at the mating sites. So it might be worth, instead of going around there, to protect certain areas where those breeding sites are or the foraging sites are. The seasonal closures of fishing zone. So they have these quotas and they have MALFOs, which stands for maximum allowable level of fishing-related mortalities. So this is really good because it allows them to track all the deaths that they have, and they can actually form a risk assessment for sea lions to help try and protect them and try and boost their numbers again. The only problem with this one is with the Minister of Fisheries. So if this rule can't actually be implemented unless the Minister of Fisheries of that area accepts it. So if the Minister of Fisheries doesn't actually agree with what they do with the seasonal closures of it, they can actually just decline it completely, and then there won't be any fishing zone, any closures of the fishing zones. So it's sort of not very helpful at all, because they can just be like, no, we don't want to do that. Even if the government's saying that, the Ministry of Fisheries can be like, no. So the sea lion exclusion devices, there has, since the implementation of these in 2004, there has been a decrease in bycatch, and since they've been introduced, there's been a 14% increase in pup spawn. So it's obviously shown that it's less disturbing for them, and they're obviously more surviving. We've got a little chart here that shows from obviously 2004 is when they were implemented. It's already going down by then, but from 2004 it's quite steadily going down. It's sort of leveled out from there, from 2009. So yeah, it has shown it has worked, because it's obviously gone down here. The problem with the sea lion exclusion devices, they found that a lot of them were suffering from head trauma, obviously because the grid is a metal grid. So if they're swimming quite fast, they can swim straight into the metal grid, and that can actually cause them head trauma. I don't think they usually killed them straight away, but that head trauma has led on to other things like bleeds in the brain. And they also found that a lot of them were getting trapped in the hood of the escape hole. So maybe by replacing the metal grid with something that's still sturdy but a little bit less harmful to the sea lions would be quite useful. And they didn't really state why they've got the hood on there. I mean, if they're getting trapped in there, I don't see why they couldn't just have a single hole at the top, just so they could swim out the top. So yeah. And in conclusion, so like I said, they are one of the rarest sea lions, so obviously need some protection and some conservation for the species. There's not really any ex situ conservation techniques being used for them, which is probably for the best, considering marine mammals aren't doing very well in these situations. Whereas the in situ conservation strategies, time will tell. Obviously, it's only been quite recently since they've come into practice. So by looking into the future, hopefully the numbers should increase. Yeah. Any questions?
Very much. Round of applause. Very good. Sounds quite positive. How do they sort of, what is their acceptable, because they've set an amount of reasonable mortality. What is reasonable
I
mortality?
couldn't actually find a number for that anywhere actually. I was trying to look for it, and it was quite vague. They did say there's like a quota for it, but they never actually stated what the quota is. I don't know if it was because they maybe have different quotas for different areas. They might have like a lower quota for a high population area. Or
I guess if they state it too clearly, people will measure them on that.
yeah.
It could be, I don't know, I mean, yeah, because there'll be people who will argue that zero
Yeah,
is reasonable,
zero is the best number to have, yeah.
which is probably impossible. And the only other thing was, you sort of said it, obviously there are strong reasons why ex situ is not good for marine mammals. I mean, that's kind of generally understood. But has there been no kind of spark in terms of like, if pups are found abandoned, do they find themselves in captivity, or?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I couldn't find anything about I was literally looking everywhere for the ex situ, and it said nothing at all. It didn't say anything about pups being rescued. It didn't say anything like that, or being hammered or anything. So
Might just be they're too remote away.
yeah. I think they're quite protective of their children, like most members are, so I don't think they're going to just let them go. But yeah, not sure about that.
They're quite remote to suddenly find yourself. They don't, yeah, I don't know, yeah. Any other questions? Good, thank you very much.